Florence in the 14th century was a city of contrasts: immense wealth and extreme poverty, artistic brilliance and political intrigue, opportunity and danger. Nestled along the Arno River, Florence was already a hub of trade, craftsmanship, and culture, attracting merchants, artists, and thinkers from across Europe. But wealth alone did not guarantee influence. In a city teeming with ambition, power was determined not just by who had money, but by who could control it, move it, and leverage it to influence society and politics. It was within this vibrant, competitive, and often ruthless environment that the Medici family rose to prominence, transforming from relatively modest merchants into bankers whose reach and influence would shape the course of European history. The Medici were not the first to handle money, nor were they the wealthiest at the beginning. Yet, through vision, innovation, and an uncanny understanding of both finance and human ambition, they created a banking empire unlike anything the world had seen before. Florence at that time demanded more than simple currency exchange or safekeeping of coins. It required credit systems, trust across city-states, and the ability to finance ventures as far-reaching as trading expeditions, wars, and monumental architectural projects. Money, as the Medici soon realized, was not just a medium of exchange. It was a tool of power, a language of influence, and a gateway to political and social control. The significance of the Medici Bank lies not only in its size or profitability, but in its lasting impact. It was the cradle of modern banking practices, introducing systems and structures that would later define European finance for centuries. From meticulous record-keeping to international branch networks, from the creation of letters of credit to managing sovereign debts, the Medici Bank established frameworks that are recognizable even in today's global economy. Their story is one of ambition, intelligence, risk, and audacity, a story that begins in a small Florentine shop and expands across Europe, intertwining with the rise of the Renaissance, the growth of commerce, and the shaping of power itself. In this documentary, we will trace the Medici Bank from its humble beginnings to its peak as a financial empire, exploring the innovations that made it revolutionary, the political maneuvers that made it influential, and the scandals and missteps that eventually led to its decline. Along the way, we will uncover lessons about power, wealth, trust, and ambition that are as relevant today as they were 6 centuries ago. This is not merely the story of money. It is the story of how one family understood the mechanics of finance so deeply that they reshaped the world around them. The Medici family's story begins not in palaces or halls of power, but in the crowded, bustling streets of Florence, where merchants and artisans worked tirelessly to make their fortunes. Giovanni di Bicci de' Medici, often regarded as the patriarch of the family's rise, understood that wealth alone was not enough. Influence, trust, and strategic relationships were equally crucial. Giovanni started as a modest merchant, skilled in trade and finance, but he had a vision that went far beyond the Florentine marketplace. He recognized that controlling money could be far more powerful than simply earning it, and that a well-managed banking system could serve not just as a source of profit, but as a mechanism to shape politics, culture, and society itself. Giovanni's first challenge was to differentiate himself from the countless other bankers in Florence. Unlike many who focused solely on short-term gains, Giovanni emphasized trustworthiness, transparency, and meticulous record-keeping. He cultivated relationships with influential figures, from the papacy to local guilds, and understood that lending money was as much about reputation as it was about interest rates. This strategic approach allowed the Medici to secure contracts with the church, a relationship that would become the foundation of their immense influence. Through these early alliances, the Medici were able to finance ventures that others considered too risky, lending to kings, popes, and merchants, and slowly establishing themselves as the financial backbone of Florence and beyond. The rise of the Medici was not just about money. However, it was about vision and timing. Florence was a city in transition, moving from medieval trade practices toward a more organized, expansive economic system. Giovanni recognized this shift and positioned the Medici Bank at the center of it. By offering services that went beyond simple currency exchange, such as credit, letters of credit, and bill management, he transformed the way merchants conducted business, allowing them to expand trade across Europe with reduced risk. This ability to innovate within finance, to see opportunities where others saw complexity, marked the Medici as more than just wealthy. They were indispensable. Their influence grew not in isolation, but in tandem with Florence itself, shaping the city's economic, political, and cultural trajectory. By the time Giovanni passed control to his son, Cosimo de' Medici, the family had firmly established itself as a financial powerhouse. Cosimo, known as Cosimo the Elder, inherited not just wealth, but an entire philosophy of banking as a means of influence and stability. Under his guidance, the Medici would expand their reach, cement alliances, and play a decisive role in the politics of Florence and the broader Italian peninsula. Their story illustrates an essential truth of history. The most powerful figures are often those who understand the mechanisms that govern both money and human behavior, and who use that knowledge to shape the world around them. The rise of the Medici family is not merely a tale of accumulating wealth. It is a study in strategy, foresight, and the understanding that true power lies in creating systems that others rely upon, systems that extend far beyond the confines of any single city, market, or generation. The foundation of the Medici Bank was not a sudden stroke of luck, but the result of careful planning, vision, and understanding of the evolving economic landscape of 15th century Europe. While Giovanni di Bicci de' Medici had already established the family's financial credibility, it was under his guidance that the Medici Bank emerged as a true institution, a structured enterprise with branches across Italy and beyond, a network capable of moving money, credit, and influence across borders with unprecedented efficiency. This connection was not just a commercial arrangement. It was a strategic alliance that would enable the Medici to leverage their wealth into political authority, shaping Florence and Italy for generations. The structure of the bank itself was revolutionary. Branches were established in major European cities: Rome, Venice, Milan, London, and Bruges, each managed by trusted family members or long-standing associates. This network allowed the Medici Bank to facilitate international trade on a scale never before seen, enabling merchants to conduct business safely across borders, often without the need to transport large amounts of physical currency. Letters of credit and bills of exchange, which the Medici helped standardize, became essential tools of commerce, reducing risk, increasing liquidity, and laying the foundation for modern banking practices. The Medici's approach combined rigorous bookkeeping, accountability, and innovative financial instruments, demonstrating that banking could be both profitable and a driver of economic growth. In doing so, the bank became not just a financial institution, but a symbol of power, sophistication, and cultural patronage. The Medici Bank was more than a financial institution. It was a gateway to political power. In Renaissance Florence, wealth alone did not guarantee authority. Political influence, social standing, and public perception were equally crucial. The Medici family understood this better than anyone. Through their banking empire, they were able to extend their reach into the corridors of power, both within Florence and across Europe. Lending to rulers, nobles, and the papacy was not merely a business decision. It was a strategic move, allowing the Medici to shape policies, influence appointments, and secure alliances that would enhance their social and political standing. In essence, the bank became an instrument of diplomacy, negotiation, and soft power, demonstrating that money could create influence far beyond its face value. Cosimo de' Medici, known as Cosimo the Elder, perfected the art of political leverage through finance. By providing critical loans to influential figures and institutions, he secured a network of indebted allies who depended on the Medici for survival and success. This network allowed Cosimo to operate behind the scenes, guiding political decisions while maintaining the appearance of a humble citizen. Florence remained officially a republic, but the Medici wielded extraordinary power, controlling the city's governance through their financial ties. Their influence extended beyond Florence, reaching the papacy in Rome, merchant republics like Venice, and the courts of Europe, creating a web of interdependent relationships that ensured both security and supremacy. The Medici's political influence was also reinforced through patronage. By funding monumental architecture, supporting the arts, and sponsoring intellectuals, the family gained public favor and social legitimacy. Buildings, churches, and public squares became physical symbols of their power, while artists and scholars disseminated their reputation across Europe. This integration of finance, politics, and culture created a multidimensional form of authority, one that could survive economic downturns and political unrest. The Medici Bank was therefore not simply a source of wealth. It was the backbone of a complex system of influence that intertwined money, governance, and societal prestige. Loans were used tactically to achieve specific political objectives. By controlling credit to key players, the Medici could manipulate decisions, broker alliances, and ensure loyalty. Even the church, one of the most powerful institutions of the era, became a client and ally. Financing papal projects and campaigns not only generated profit, but also secured spiritual and temporal leverage. The bank's financial operations became inseparable from political strategy, demonstrating that control over money equated to control over destiny. The Medici's ability to navigate these dual realms, banking and politics, set a precedent for how financial institutions could shape governments and influence history. Through political influence, the Medici transformed banking into an instrument of power. They proved that strategic lending, coupled with cultural patronage and careful alliance building, could elevate a family from merchants to rulers without ever seizing formal office. The Medici Bank exemplified the concept that money, when wielded with foresight and strategy, is far more than a tool for profit. It is a language of influence, a mechanism for governance, and a force capable of shaping the course of history itself. The genius of the Medici Bank lay not only in its financial innovations, but in its unprecedented network of branches that spanned Europe. While most banks of the time operated locally, the Medici created a system capable of supporting international commerce, bridging cities and markets that were often separated by hundreds of miles. Florence served as the nerve center, coordinating operations in Rome, Venice, Milan, Bruges, and other strategic locations. Each branch operated semi-independently under the guidance of trusted family members or loyal associates, allowing the bank to expand rapidly without losing control over its operations. This network enabled merchants and rulers to conduct business safely and efficiently, creating an interconnected system that resembled the multinational corporations of today. The network was more than a logistical achievement. It was a strategic masterpiece. By establishing branches in key economic and political centers, the Medici Bank could facilitate trade, transfer credit, and manage funds across borders with unmatched efficiency. Merchants in Florence could pay suppliers in England, bankers in Rome could finance military campaigns in France, and the papacy could receive funds for building projects, all without the physical movement of gold or silver. Letters of credit and bills of exchange, supported by this network, allowed the Medici to minimize risk, control liquidity, and maintain trust across vast distances. In doing so, the bank became indispensable to European commerce, transforming the way money moved through society and laying the foundations for modern international banking. Each branch was carefully structured to maintain the integrity and reputation of the Medici brand. Managers were rigorously selected, accounting standards were uniformly enforced, and financial reporting was centralized in Florence. This combination of delegated responsibility and centralized oversight ensured that mistakes or fraud could be quickly detected and addressed. At the same time, the network allowed the Medici to respond dynamically to changing market conditions, political unrest, or shifts in trade routes. This level of coordination and control was unheard of in the 15th century and demonstrated a remarkable understanding of risk management, diversification, and operational strategy. The international reach of the Medici Bank also amplified the family's political and cultural influence. By financing governments, merchants, and religious institutions across Europe, the Medici became pivotal players in shaping policies, alliances, and even artistic trends. Funds flowing through their network helped support architectural masterpieces, fund wars, and underwrite trade expeditions that would define the Renaissance era. The network was both a business tool and a geopolitical instrument, allowing the Medici to extend their influence far beyond Florence while securing their position as the most powerful banking family in Europe. Ultimately, the Medici banking network illustrates the revolutionary potential of scale, structure, and strategy in finance. It shows how a single family, through vision and meticulous management, could connect cities, markets, and institutions across an entire continent. By combining innovation with operational excellence, the Medici not only transformed commerce in their own time, but established enduring principles that continue to define international banking today. The bank's network was the invisible architecture behind Florence's prosperity, the Renaissance's flourishing, and the Medici's unparalleled influence proof that control over money, when strategically deployed, can shape the course of history itself. No empire, no matter how carefully constructed, is immune to internal challenges and human error. The Medici Bank, despite its brilliance and unprecedented reach, faced crises that would test its resilience and reputation. By the mid-15th century, the bank's expansive network, ambitious lending strategies, and political entanglements created vulnerabilities that could and eventually would be exploited. Risk, both financial and reputational, grew with each branch, each loan, and each political maneuver. The very instruments that had made the Medici Bank revolutionary, letters of credit, international branches, and high-profile clients, also exposed it to potential fraud, mismanagement, and the unpredictability of human behavior. Some of the most serious challenges arose from mismanagement within the branches. Managers, though carefully chosen, were human. Some made reckless loans, others engaged in outright fraud, and a few pursued personal gain at the expense of the bank's integrity. These errors, amplified by the Medici Bank's size and complexity, threatened liquidity and trust. The bank's reliance on family members and close associates sometimes backfired, as loyalty did not always guarantee competence. A single failed loan in a distant city could ripple through the network, creating financial strain and forcing the Florence headquarters to intervene. The very decentralization that allowed rapid expansion also made oversight challenging, and the Medici learned that operational control could never be fully delegated. Scandals were also fueled by political entanglements. Lending to popes, monarchs, and city-states brought prestige, but it also created exposure. When clients defaulted or delayed repayment, the Medici Bank had limited recourse, particularly when the borrower wielded political power. One high-profile default could damage reputation as severely as it damaged the balance sheet. The bank's close association with the papacy, for example, was a double-edged sword. It provided influence and profits. But any papal scandal or financial mismanagement could reflect directly on the Medici, threatening the trust that underpinned their entire operation. Furthermore, external factors exacerbated these internal weaknesses. Wars, shifts in trade routes, political rivalries, and economic downturns in Europe created unpredictable pressure on the bank's finances. Florence itself was not immune to civil unrest, and political factions sometimes sought to undermine the Medici by attacking their financial interests. These pressures revealed a sobering reality. Even the most innovative and well-managed institutions are vulnerable to forces beyond their control. The Medici Bank's ability to survive, at least temporarily, was a testament to both its ingenuity and the personal skill of its leaders. Ultimately, the challenges and scandals of the Medici Bank demonstrate that innovation and influence are never without risk. The systems the Medici created were extraordinary, but they relied on discipline, oversight, and trust. When these elements faltered, the consequences were immediate and severe. Mismanagement, fraud, and political exposure combined to weaken the very foundations of the banking empire, setting the stage for eventual decline. The Medici learned, sometimes painfully, that even the most powerful financial machine is only as strong as the people who operate it and the stability of the world around it. This chapter in their history is a reminder that behind every success story lies vulnerability, and that greatness often carries the seeds of its own challenges. Although the Medici Bank eventually declined, its legacy is nothing short of revolutionary. The systems, practices, and philosophies established by the Medici family formed the blueprint for modern banking, influencing financial institutions for centuries to come. The innovations they introduced, letters of credit, bills of exchange, double-entry bookkeeping, and branch networks, became fundamental tools of commerce, enabling trade, investment, and economic growth across Europe. In essence, the Medici demonstrated that banking was not merely a transactional enterprise, but a strategic instrument capable of shaping entire societies, influencing governments, and fostering cultural renaissance. The Medici's approach to finance redefined trust. They showed that credibility, transparency, and reputation could be as valuable as gold. A bank's success depended not only on its wealth, but on the confidence it inspired in clients, partners, and even rivals. This principle is a cornerstone of modern finance, where trust underpins credit, investment, and international transactions. By intertwining banking with culture, politics, and social influence, the Medici created a model in which financial institutions became engines of power, capable of directing not just capital, but the trajectory of nations and civilizations. Beyond technical innovations, the Medici Bank set a precedent for organizational structure. Its use of delegated management, centralized oversight, and operational standardization prefigured the corporate and multinational enterprises of today. Each branch was empowered to act independently while remaining accountable to the central office. enabling scale without sacrificing control. This balance of autonomy and accountability allowed the Medici Bank to manage complexity on an unprecedented scale, illustrating the timeless principle that successful institutions combine vision with disciplined execution. Culturally, the Medici's banking success funded the flowering of the Renaissance. Wealth generated by the bank supported artists, architects, scientists, and thinkers whose work transformed Europe. From Michelangelo to Brunelleschi, the Medici were patrons whose financial support facilitated artistic and intellectual revolutions. In this way, banking became inseparable from culture, showing that economic systems can influence not only markets, but the very soul of society. The Medici legacy, therefore, extends beyond finance. It encompasses art, politics, and the very foundations of modern civilization. In sum, the Medici Bank's legacy is a testament to the transformative power of vision, innovation, and trust. Its practices laid the foundation for international finance. Its strategies illustrated the power of money as influence, and its support of culture demonstrated how banking can shape history itself. Modern banking owes much to the principles pioneered by the Medici, and their story continues to inspire generations who seek to understand not just how money works, but how it can be wielded to create lasting impact. The story of the Medici Bank is not just a tale of wealth, influence, and artistic patronage. It is a masterclass in vision, strategy, and the power of money to shape history. From its humble beginnings in the crowded streets of Florence to its expansion across Europe, the bank demonstrates that financial institutions are not merely passive repositories of wealth, but active engines of economic, political, and cultural transformation. The Medici understood that money, when coupled with trust, innovation, and foresight, becomes far more than a medium of exchange. It becomes a tool to influence decisions, shape societies, and leave a legacy that endures for centuries. One of the key lessons of the Medici Bank is the centrality of trust. Every letter of credit, every loan, and every branch relied on the confidence of clients and partners. Reputation became the most valuable currency, proving that financial systems are only as strong as the faith they inspire. Another lesson is the importance of innovation. By introducing double-entry bookkeeping, branch networks, and instruments like bills of exchange, the Medici expanded commerce beyond what was previously imaginable. They showed that banking is as much about creating systems and processes as it is about managing money. Strategic thinking, operational discipline, and the ability to adapt to political and economic shifts are timeless principles that remain relevant to bankers, entrepreneurs, and leaders today. The Medici Bank also illustrates the intimate connection between finance and influence. Through strategic lending, political alliances, and cultural patronage, the Medici transformed wealth into power. Their story reveals that money is not simply an economic tool. It is a lever for shaping society, fostering art and science, and establishing enduring social and political influence. Yet it also teaches caution. Mismanagement, overextension, and reliance on reputation alone can expose even the most powerful institutions to decline. The Medici experienced challenges, scandals, and eventual contraction of their banking empire, reminding us that greatness in finance requires balance, discipline, and foresight. Finally, the legacy of the Medici Bank transcends money. By funding art, architecture, and intellectual endeavors, the bank helped spark the Renaissance, influencing culture and history in ways that continue to resonate. The Medici demonstrate that finance, when wielded wisely, can become a catalyst for societal transformation. Their story inspires us to think beyond immediate profit, to consider the broader impact of wealth, and to understand that the principles of trust, innovation, and influence are universal and timeless. As we reflect on the rise, influence, challenges, and legacy of the Medici Bank, one thing becomes clear. The power of money is not just in accumulation. It is in vision, strategy, and the ability to use it to shape the world. The Medici understood this centuries ago, and their lessons remain profoundly relevant today. For anyone seeking to understand the origins of modern banking, the mechanics of influence, or the intersection of finance and culture, the story of the Medici Bank is a beacon, a reminder that vision, when combined with strategy and trust, can leave a mark that endures far longer than any fortune.